Greetings everybody, Maximus here. Well, I don't do this a lot, beg for likes and subscriptions, but did you know? YouTube's algorithm looks for likes and comments to push your video to a new audience. So please don't forget to give the video a like if you do, and of course, let me know down below. And if you haven't yet subscribed, I would appreciate it if you'd consider. Oh, and this? That's my son Dominic. Okay, now the news. Well, on Friday, June 14, the FAA and Europe's EASA, along with Boeing and Airbus, all reported that they are investigating how counterfeit titanium with falsified documentation was used in manufacturing Boeing and Airbus passenger planes. The bogus titanium involved was used by Spirit AeroSystems, a key supplier to both Boeing and Airbus. However, all companies involved have gone into full-blown damage control mode, issuing assurances that the phony titanium installed on many aircraft has not jeopardized safety. Spirit spokesman Joe Bucino said the phony aircraft bling came with counterfeit documents as well. Bucino said more than 1,000 tests have been completed to confirm the mechanical and metallurgical properties of the affected material to ensure continued airworthiness. Airbus identified its A220 model as one of the aircraft that's been affected. However, Boeing declined to say what planes were involved in the issue, but said it affected only a small number of parts on any aircraft. The problem with the titanium, which was first reported by the New York Times, highlights the heightened concern about fake or improperly documented parts entering the aviation supply chain in recent years, and the growing pressure on the supply of titanium. Aircraft manufacturers rely on a sprawling network of suppliers, making it difficult to oversee quality. So as a result of this and other sketchy aircraft suppliers, several aerospace manufacturers launched a task force in February to try and better address the issue. In a statement Friday, the FAA said that Boeing disclosed the issue to both regulators voluntarily and issued a bulletin to suppliers reminding them to be alert to potential falsified records. The FAA also said it was investigating the scope of the problem. But the European Aviation Safety Agency, which oversees Airbus, said it learned of the issue from authorities in Italy and began an investigation. But so far, EASA said it has not found indications of a safety problem. In a statement, EASA said that it will investigate further the root cause of the document traceability issue as it continues to monitor closely any new developments that could potentially lead to an unsafe condition in the fleet. While manufacturers said there were no immediate safety concerns, the disclosure of the questionable titanium was made as Boeing remains under close scrutiny by the FAA and lawmakers, as reviews continue over the mid-air door panel blowout of an Alaska Airlines 737 MAX in January, as well as accounts from whistleblowers alleging of improper manufacturing processes and the possible of cover-ups by Boeing. And the timing is also interesting considering Boeing CEO Dave Calhoun is scheduled to testify in front of a Senate panel investigating the issue next week. The New York Times reported that an investigation into the titanium came after a supplier found small holes in the metal linked to corrosion. According to a person briefed on the situation who spoke on the condition of anonymity due to the ongoing investigation. He said the metal entered the supply chain from China laundered through Italy and Turkish companies. Titanium is light but strong, making it useful in aircraft. But as demand has grown in recent years and the fallout from the war in Ukraine has constrained Russian supplies, experts say aviation suppliers have increasingly turned to China as sources for the metal, where the early stages of production are highly concentrated. Yeah, because we know China would never do such a nefarious thing. Sal Arima, the founder of titanium supplier Experian X, said that those Chinese sources can be difficult to trace. That poses a problem because titanium is highly reactive during production, meaning metal intended for use in planes has to be made under highly controlled conditions to avoid contamination that can affect its strength and corrosion resistance. Arima, whose company is now beginning to produce titanium in the U.S., said we have a broken supply chain. Being able to trace it is very difficult, he said. Boeing said the titanium was linked to shipments involving a small group of suppliers, but Boeing said that tests of the metal have indicated that the metal was the right kind of titanium for use in aircraft. In a statement, Boeing said we are removing any affected parts on airplanes prior to delivery. However, Boeing concluded our analysis shows the in-service fleet can continue to fly safely. As for Airbus, they said that the airworthiness of its A220 remains intact and that the safety and quality of our aircraft are our utmost important priority. However, according to the Washington Post, as the aviation supply chain is growing more sprawling and complex, moving farther away from where the final manufacturing occurs, there has been growing concern in the industry and among regulators about how to ensure that the parts that companies are receiving meet standards. They reported last year CFM International, an engine manufacturer, accused one of its suppliers, AOG Technics, of selling it thousands of engine parts with forged documents. Then in September, the FAA issued a formal notification over a part supplied by AOG Technics without the agency's production approval. Britain's Serious Fraud Office has launched a criminal investigation into the matter. A subsequent review found that fewer than 1% of CFM engines used in older generation Boeing 737 and Airbus A320 aircraft were affected, but the incident raised alarms in the industry. It led major manufacturers and U.S. airlines, including American and United, to form a supply chain integrity coalition. The Integrity Coalition, formed in February, is co-chaired by Robert Sumwalt, the former chair of the National Transportation Safety Board, and John D. Porcari, a former U.S. Deputy Secretary of Transportation. As part of its work, it launched a 90-day review aimed at finding ways to strengthen existing supply chains, work that will be used to develop recommendations to block unapproved parts. Porcari outlined some of the coalition's work during a joint aviation safety conference sponsored by American and European Union regulators in Washington, D.C. this week. He said allegations against AOG Technics are not isolated incidents. He added that the coalition notes that several areas key to the investigation efforts are documentation, authentication, and supplier standards, as well as oversight. Porcari said, "I want to underscore the pace and intensity of this work. We're trying to accomplish this very quickly. This is a unique, pop-up potential safety issue, and we've tried to move quickly addressing it." You know what I think the real fear in all this bogus titanium floating around is that none of us really know if Airbus and Boeing are actually telling the truth about any of this. I guess it's just one more thing to stress about while flying. And speaking of stress, that brings us back to Boeing and its literally always broke down space capsule. The Starliner, which is presently stranded at the International Space Station with no clue yet on when or if they can return back to Earth. But even after years of delays, glitches, malfunctions, and technical problems, Boeing Starliner finally made it to the International Space Station, with NASA carrying real-life human astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams on board last week. But while Butch and Sundance thought they were just going on a 3-hour tour, I imagine they never expected to end up on the outer space version of Gilligan's Island. But like I said, exactly when the Professor Marianne and the the Boeing Starliner will be able to undock and deliver its crew of 2 back to the surface remains to be seen. Why exactly is that, you ask? Well, I'm going to tell you. Because NASA has discovered an astounding 5 different helium leaks so far, each representing yet another notch in the belt of failure of Boeing spacecraft already defected in development. So why do they need helium in space? Well, sure, you could blow up party balloons. However, helium gas in the Starliner is used for the capsule's thruster system to allow the thrusters to fire while navigating through space. So to put it in layman's terms, somewhere between Barstow and Vegas, the Pinto ran out of gas and there's not a gas station in sight. However, NASA is giving Boeing another 4 days to figure this mess out, extending Wilmore and Williams' mission aboard the ISS from June 14 to no earlier than June 18, though it's unclear whether the leaks are to blame for the delay. Boeing says that it is still addressing what impacts, if any, the 5 small leaks in the service module helium manifolds would have on the remainder of the mission. But let's face it, Boeing has been embarrassed by failure after failure attempting to get its first crewed test flight off the ground since Starliner began, including countless delays, scrubs, technical screw-ups, and an unsuccessful uncrewed test flight all the way back before we even knew what a pandemic was in 2019. Where that leaves Starliner's future viability for providing NASA with a viable way to get astronauts into space remains to be seen. While it miraculously was able to dock with the ISS because it almost didn't, its mission isn't over until the Professor and Marianne are safely back on the ground. The key word there being safely. It was just last month that NASA and Boeing discovered the first helium leak, which was later and loudly downplayed and determined not to be severe enough to delay its journey to the ISS. But even on its way up before reaching the ISS, the capsule sprang even more helium leaks, resulting in docking procedures failure to go as planned, with Boeing calling off its first attempt due to reaction control thrusters malfunctioning. But in a recent statement about their Starliner kerfuffle, Boeing said, "There's a lot we still don't know about Starliner's current status." Oh, you think? Fortunately, engineers have determined that the capsule will have plenty of helium for its return mission, roughly 10 times as much as it needs to maneuver through the near vacuum of space. Boeing noted that while Starliner is docked, all the manifolds are closed per normal mission operations, preventing helium loss from the tanks. Well, there you have it. A good news, bad news video. Good news for Boeing this time because at least Airbus gets to share in their misery. However, bad news for Boeing as far as their space program goes. So far, Starliner has been, well, a train wreck. But now it's your turn. Let me know down below. And as always, until next time, yeah, this is Maximus.